You're here. I want to talk about transformation. How many of you are into personal transformation? How many of you want to transform your life and understand how to use this thing better? We've heard a lot of speakers this afternoon. And each one of them, there's a running theme, isn't there? They talked about what? Service. And what it took to get to that place where they can not only lead with their heart, but use their brain. They had thoughts. They had things that made a difference. Well, when we did these events, one of the things that we were able to do was we were able to measure the energy in the room, what we call the morphogenic field. Now, you feel the energy in this room, is that correct? And many of you have been to workshops and to events, and you have felt that, right? What happens a few days later? The energy goes down, doesn't it? Well, I want to show you the effect that scientifically we were able to not only measure the energy with one of our colleagues. He had developed this device. It's called a Sputnik. And so Dr. Konstantin Korotkov. And so we were able to measure the energy in the room, in the morphogenic field, to see if there was any effect of what happened in the field to individuals and their thought processes. Very interesting, huh? You know, we found more than we had bargained for. We did the first event in February, and we just tried this as kind of a scientific experiment. We didn't know what we were going to get. We didn't even know if we were going to get anything, or that we could record anything that would be worthwhile. Let me show you the results of some of that. So here is the level of the energy field on day one. This was a 3-day event where advanced meditators were doing meditation and working on self-transformation. So you can see that there's the graph down there, and it's measured at 287.1 joules. That's in light energy. By the end of the 3rd day, the energy had gone to 5,010.97. Huge difference. It's the energy that you're feeling right now. It's what you're experiencing, and I want you to know what the effect of that is. So when we looked at alignment of the chakra centers, how many of you are familiar with chakra centers? Okay, a good number of you. We have energy centers in the body that are based on electromagnetic energy. And so those chakras, we were able to measure that. So we looked at people before the event began and then after the event, just looking at the change in energy. And you can see the change in alignment. We've got lots and lots of these. So this was one way that we were able to measure what was going on in the room. Another is what we call coherence. This is how your brain processes information. What we have is a picture up here. All of that red is what we call hypercoherence. Chatter, 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 very busy brain. And the blue is what we call a hypocoherence, where it's not processing that much. So we have a very incoherent brain state right here. At the end of the event, when we measured that individual again, we can see that it went from a less coherent state to a more coherent state. In other words, they were able to do things with their thoughts and with their brain that was affecting them emotionally, physically, and mentally. Now, let's see what some of those look like real quick. So here is some brain waves. You can see where those great big amplitudes are. You see those? Yeah, and just before them is normal brainwave activity. What we're seeing there is going into what we call a Kundalini experience. How many of you are familiar with the word Kundalini? It is an energy process. Now, as human beings, we measure our brainwave patterns from 1 hertz all the way up to 60 hertz, as a general rule. And so what Kundalini does is it allows your tuner to be expanded so that your energy, your ability to process energy, is expanded and your capability is greater. So what we see here is an event, a person having a Kundalini experience. And so what that does is we have the large amplitudes. It causes the hippocampus to be activated. And the hippocampus deals with long-term memory and the ability to learn. So here's the person having this event, and they are learning from the things that they are experiencing in this energy that is coming from within the field. would you agree that you can all learn from the energy? Have you ever had a lot of aha moments when the energy is high and you just feel it, you're in the rhythm, everything is flowing? Well, that's exactly what we're seeing here. So some of you, your brains will look just like this. There's another part of the brain that also deals with the amygdala. The amygdala is our fight or flight response. It plays a big role in planning and executing our emotional reactions. So when we are in a more coherent state, we have the ability to manage those emotions. The heart that we feel. When somebody says, I feel it in here. When you have that excitement, that exuberance, that joy, the inspiration, and the ability to connect with the brain. So some of the measures that we did some work with HeartMath. How many are familiar with HeartMath? The HeartMath has been doing a lot of research, so we had some people that were wearing the HeartMath devices because we were looking at heart coherence as well as brain coherence and looking at how they interact with one another. So here's what it looks like in 3 dimensions. Okay. So this particular person, we had 2 different events. And in February, in Carefree, Arizona, you can see all of the red. The red means that it is more than 3 standard deviations above normal. And then this same person was experiencing this Kundalini event again in Colorado. It was something that we call ecstasy. So how many of you have ever experienced ecstasy? Yeah. Okay, some of you are shaking your head going, yeah, I know what that means. This is exactly what that is. This is a brain orgasm that's going on with this individual. So it is a Kundalini type energy centers within the body that they were able to work with, to coalesce that energy and bring it out in a specific location. So what is an explanation of the Kundalini experience? It brings about extraordinary transformation in the body and the mind. A system where an individual can use that huge surge of energy in healing chronic diseases and enhance mental capabilities. How many of you believe that you have the power to do that? All of you should raise your hand because that is the scientific truth. You all have the ability to coalesce that energy and to utilize that energy in ways that you never thought possible. So independent research studies using brain mapping, that's what QEEG is, shows a high incidence of delta waves and delta waves help us deal with deep relaxation, our problem-solving activities, become more effective decision makers, and we are enhanced with our personal relationships. And it also lets us be more coherent within ourselves, that warm, positive personality that people have. So here are normal brainwaves before a Kundalini experience. And then when they're having that experience, this is what the brainwaves look like. Can you see the difference? Yeah, so we have more energy that's interacting in the brain. I don't know why our motion isn't working. That's a 3D. It's supposed to be showing you what's going on there. So, but we would have the delta waves, which are the ones in the red. I'm not going to explain too much because we're a little short on time here to be able to go into a whole course on what all of these mean. But the delta waves are up there in the red, and then we look at the ecstasy part and the back part of the brain where visualization and all of that occurs. So the important thing here is to understand that we were able to capture that, to measure those things. Now, we also had some people that were involved in the event. One person was in a wheelchair. He had a traumatic brain injury from an automobile accident. And so this is what we call hypocoherence. Hypocoherence. It is a very low cognitive function that was going on there. By the end of the event, after they had gone through experiencing the energy in the room, now green is normal when we look at the brain maps. But you can see a difference, a shift in his coherence. You see the shift? Yeah, it went from a less coherent state to a more coherent state. And now when we look at the brain mapping part of this, this is the traumatic brain injury up here, and down here all of the blue that is a lesser amount of cognitive functioning. Okay? So remember, green is normal. So by the end of the event, this is what the brain looked like. Now, we've been able to follow this individual for about 3 months and talk to the person that does the physical training with this individual, and they've been able to maintain this during that time and has begun to have miraculous kinds of events happen in their life. He got up, I think 2 weeks ago, was able to stand up out of his wheelchair and take several steps which he could not do before. So the power of energy, the power of thought, we see, and the energy that we live in, because we live in an energy field, we're able to experience that and utilize it. Here's another one. Another person had Parkinson's disease. Now, when we first looked at this, at a tremendous amount of hypercoherence, we measured before the event, and we could physically see the tremors with this individual. We could also see it on the EEG. When we mapped at the end of the event, you can see a shift going from a very hypercoherent state where the tremors were occurring to a lesser one. Let's take a look at the brain map. So here we see the tremors, and then where the body functions were pretty much shut down. And this is what it looked like at the end of the event. Now, this person happens to live in Phoenix, where my clinic is, and we've been able, over the last 4 months, do a brain map every month to see whether they're able to maintain that. We had a particular thought protocol that we had them experience, and they've been able to change that. If we had more time, I would show you each of the brain maps over the 4 months, but they have progressively gotten better. And her husband says that her tremors are very infrequent now. So, what is this thing that we call brain mapping? Let's see if I can give you a little bit of education on that. So, brain mapping is a non-invasive procedure. So it looks kind of invasive where I'm sticking a needle in somebody's head, right? So what does he mean non-invasive? Well, we're just trying to inject the gel to make contact with the scalp there. So, yeah, right. So the conductive gel makes contact with the scalp. And then the EEG information, so that's where we see all the squiggly lines. And then we will take that and run it through another program and turn it into what we call a quantitative EEG, a QEEG. And that lets us depict it as what we call tomography, kind of like the weather maps that you see on television, right? The different color gradations. Well, the same thing is here. So we see areas that are overregulated and areas that are underregulated, and that helps us understand with those patterns the kinds of things that we see. So in my clinic, we work with a lot of attention deficit disorder and anxiety and depression and those kinds of things, and we're able to get people off of medications and improve their performance. We work with leadership. I've worked with a number of veterans who have dealt with post-traumatic stress disorder, and all of it deals with learning to manage the energy centers in the body and what goes on, and retraining the brain in order to get optimal performance. So whether you're into athletics or into academics, or you just want personal improvement, you want to improve your sleep cycles, you want to improve your memory, you want to improve your attitude about life, your understanding, your thinking process, this is how we do it. And the brain map helps to guide us. Now, one of the things scientifically, I always wondered, how does prayer work? Any of you ever wondered that? How does prayer work? Yeah. I was just curious. I couldn't understand. Okay, so if I do something like pray silently, how is that understood? And when I have information that comes, how does that happen? I want to know that. So as the neuroscientist in me wouldn't let that rest. So now what we understand is there's this part of the brain called the thalamus. And the thalamus is what controls all of these frequencies. And at the top of the thalamus, right up here, there is a set of what we call reticular cells. And those reticular cells bind these axonal columns of cellular activity, and it goes from the subcortex, or your subconscious down here, and it goes right up to the top into the cortex, and it comes out right here, right at the top center of the head, about where the soft spot on a baby's head would be. Okay? It's our antenna. In some cultures, we call that what? The Crown Chakra, right?
Yes.
So it is a way for the information to get in. Vibration. We are vibrational beings living in a vibrational universe. And so it is that thought, when I have a thought, it's able to get out and interact, and we won't get into the quantum physics because we don't have time today, but quantum entanglement, we are all part of that energy field. It is, have you ever had that experience where you just know what somebody's going to say, and then they say it? Or you're thinking about somebody,
And they call you.
and the phone rings and it's them. That's quantum entanglement. And we all have the ability to interact with this field, with each other, as part of that. And we might talk about that more when I'm hanging around here. So there are patterns that we see in the brain mapping, things like when somebody is highly intuitive. So when we measure them brain map-wise, this top row is delta, theta, alpha, and beta. The bottom row is all beta. Won't go into all of what that means. But this pattern that we see here is when people are more intuitive than the average person. They just know things. Things happen for them. When you are in an intuitive state, and we all have the ability to do this, it's a matter of getting those brain waves aligned. So when we have that total spirit-mind-body relationship, then we are more intuitive. Then we can begin to use that power of thought in order to affect our own world. We create our own reality. How many of you believe that? It is absolutely true. And if we don't have that alignment, then we put resistance into the field, and we are not being able to create. You cannot create from a low level of frequencies. So if you're dealing with anger, frustration, disappointment, despair, those frequencies are lower and slower, and the frequencies where we have happiness, contentment, joy are faster, higher frequencies. You cannot create things in your own world if you are in the lower, slower frequencies. And it all begins with gratitude. Gratitude is what will shift that, having this feeling of thankfulness. We know that when we have delta and theta waves that are alternating back and forth, that people experience high levels of gratitude. And you can literally train your brain to do that. All right, let's take a quick look at some others. Here's, just so that you get some idea, when we are talking about working with your thoughts, becoming a thought genius, if you will, here are some of the areas. So when we look at this, we know that 1 hertz, when we have a suppression of 1 hertz, that is the connection to the collective conscious. What is the collective conscious? That's the field. That's the information that we all have access to. And when we have 3 to 8 hertz, when we have this, all of this blue stuff here, when it's not green, when it is pushed down, it is allowing that gateway between our subconscious and our conscious mind. Then we have to have something that will bring it into our conscious awareness. And so alpha is that frequency. So alpha is 9, 10, 11, and 12. In this case, 11 hertz allows us to be relaxed and awake. It increases our focus, increases our awareness of what's going on, not only physically, but within the field. At 12 hertz, we find that this is very centric. This is where a lot of our mental stability occurs. We are also passively absorbing information. Information from where? The subconscious and from the field, where we are actively taking in that information. And there at 13 hertz, this is very dominant in being able to keep our focused attention toward external stimuli, being aware of what's going on around us. And being able, it's also one of the key learning frequencies to be able to take that information, not only from the field, from our subconscious, or from other information, and learn, to begin to apply it within ourselves, to know something. There's a difference between reading something and knowing something. Do you agree? Yes. Okay. And then 18 to 20 hertz, this helps us sometimes experience that euphoria, the inspiration, and also connects a lot with our ability to understand what's being